Today I want to talk about multiplying and dividing real numbers. So when you multiply two numbers or divide two numbers with the same sign, alright, it's going to give you a positive answer. This is stuff you've been working with for years. 8 times 2, 24 divided by 6. These are all positive answers. It's the same when you multiply or divide two negatives. It'll give you a positive answer. And the reason for this, again, you have to look at the signs that come before the numbers. You've got a negative here, and you've got a negative there. What's the opposite of a negative? The opposite of a negative is going to give you a positive. All right, same thing here. The opposite divided by the opposite. The opposite of a negative is a positive. Now, when you multiply or divide with different signs, if you have one's a positive and one's a negative, the answer will always be a negative. The order of the positive negative doesn't matter. Well, what if a positive comes first and a negative comes second, or a negative comes first and a positive comes second? It doesn't matter. The other thing that doesn't matter is the absolute value. It does not matter. Well, the negative number is bigger, so it's got to be this. It doesn't matter. The absolute value has absolutely no bearing on it whatsoever. It's not like it was with the adding and subtracting. Multiplying and dividing and adding and subtracting have completely different rules. So when you are working with numbers such as the following, it's the same type of thing. What's the opposite, if you can give me a second, what's the opposite of a positive? It's going to give you a negative. Well, my 8's normal, but then I've got this negative here. Guess what? It's a negative answer. What's the opposite of a positive? Negative. My 8 is again normal, and I've got this negative 2. It's going to be a negative. Different signs is always going to give you negative. It does not matter what the bigger number is. I also want to talk to you about simplifying squares and square roots. Every positive real number has a positive and a negative square root. There's actually two answers. Every single time there's two answers. The only thing that you need to be careful of is how the signs are placed. I'm going to give you some examples here. If we look, let's see, if we have, what is the square root of 9? What number times that same number gives you 9? Well, 3. The reason why 3 times 3 is 9. There's another answer here, though. What's negative 3 times negative 3? It's going to give you 9. So the square root of 9 is not only 3, but it's also negative 3. Or, the way that you could write this, the square root of 9 is equal to positive or negative 3. You're going to start to see that sign a lot. That means that the answer can be both. All right, I'm going to go over a couple more examples here. All right, some basic examples. Oh, just a second. Sorry about that. Basic examples. So what's the square root of 49? All right, it has two answers. Not only is it a positive answer, it's also a negative answer. It's going to be 7. All right, square root of 100, same thing. It's going to give you a positive and a negative 10. Now, earlier I had said be careful of the signs. This is what I'm talking about. Something like this. All right, what's the opposite of the square root of 36? That's going to give you negative 6. What's the opposite of square root of 64? That's going to give you negative 8. All right, so you've got to be mindful of those signs that come before the number. Right, sometimes problems will ask you very specifically, what's the difference between the three? Well, if you look, this one is just a straight up, what's the square root of 16? Give me the positive answer. This one, what's the opposite of the square root of 16? It wants the negative answer. And this last one, because you see both signs above, it wants both answers. All right, most cases, we're just looking for the positive answer. However, you need to know that technically it has two answers, all right? Every single square root has two answers, one positive, one negative. All right, multiplicative inverse. This is the reciprocal of a number. I sometimes call the reciprocal the flip-flop of a number, and the product will always be 1. So, for example, if I have the number, give me a second here. If I have the number 2/3, I want to know what the reciprocal is. That's the flip-flop. Basically, what's in my numerator spot goes to my denominator, and my denominator spot goes to my numerator. So the reciprocal is going to be 3/2. Now, the product will always be 1. What I'm saying is, if I take 2/3 and I multiply it by 3/2, you remember multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across. 2 times 3 is 6, 3 times 2 is 6. Reduce this, simplify it, 6 divided by 6 gives you 1. This happens every single time with multiplicative inverse. Couple quick examples. Let's just do a 4/7. The multiplicative inverse would simply be 7/4. Multiply them out, it would cancel. Now, what about 1/3? If you flip it, it's 3/1, or simply 3. Last example, what's the inverse of 5? Think back, how do you change a whole number to a fraction? Put it over 1, so the inverse would be 1/5. We'll do some more examples with this tomorrow in class. Last thing for today is dividing fractions. I don't want to get into this because you've already learned this. Just a little reminder. You only need to know 3 steps. The first step is keep. Keep that first number, whatever it might be. The second step is to change. Change your division to multiplication. And the final step is flip. You need to flip that second number to the inverse. So basically, what is the reciprocal? So keep, change, flip. All right, we will work with a couple problems, but just to give you a quick idea, if we have, let's say, 2/3 divided by 4/9, all right, what that's going to change into is keep the first 2/3, change your division to multiplication, and flip that second number. So if you multiply straight across, it's going to be 18/12, and then you can reduce that, but I'm not getting into that tonight. We will do that tomorrow. All right, have a good night.